Yeah, it's exactly what we looked at in inspection, okay? Like Phil said, have that direct and be super strong on that right ski and just bring it right into the double, all right? It's perfect in here, a little shaded in this section, but good move.
You need to respect the danger, and you need to respect the sport and know that the power that it possesses, because it can ruin your life, it can paralyze you, it can defeat you, and it can do it instantaneously.
I used to have a little question that I would ask myself at the top of every race, and it basically was, are you afraid to get hurt here today? And I always answered no. Once you start caring, then you're finished.
You got to have that respect for the hill and for what can happen to you. I mean, you don't have to look too far to see, major injuries and career-ending kind of stuff, and you got to respect that, and you got to have that not on the forefront of your mind, but back in your kind of consciousness about it. You have to be aware of it.
You got to deal with fear. It's like you trick yourself into being confident into what you're doing. You just reiterate these things in your head, and you just keep rehearsing it in your brain mentally, like, I'm going through this turn this way, and you're like, okay, I can do that, I can do that.
Come on, David! One!
There is a place where action and reaction coexist. A place between safety and danger, where calm serenity and sheer terror intersect. A place where the best defense is a good offense. Where simply hanging on melds with the ability to control the situation. Where eyes open wide by fear discover reassuring opportunity. It is not a comfortable place. It is not a safe place. But for an elite few, it is the only place worth being. It is the thin line. Few sports are as complex and exacting as the downhill. At its most basic, the idea is simple. Find the right line and ski down a mountain as fast as you can. It may seem straightforward, but beneath this simple premise lies a swirling array of variables that makes this sport much more intricate than it may appear. When these variables are managed correctly, the result is beautiful and elegant. But a good downhill run is a fragile equation, and when things go wrong, the ensuing chaos can be disastrous. The World Cup Downhill is an exclusive club, with membership gained only by a willingness to test the boundaries of human ability, and every now and then, to take a step beyond. This is the story of the downhill. It is not a chronological account of the sport's history, but rather an examination of the people and the places that over the years have made this the ultimate extreme sport.
Downhill is the extreme of extreme events in the world. Anybody who thinks that that's not true would argue that, has never been on a World Cup downhill course, has never skied or tried to ski race like at that level. I mean, think about it. Your body is the engine of a race car. Your knees are the struts. Your legs are the shock absorbers of a car. Nothing is there to protect you. You have no roll cage, you have no seat belt. You're depending on two sticks that are razor sharp, that your feet are clicked into these bindings that could explode at any time. It's the extreme of extremes. And you have to love risk, and you have to love going for it, because that's why downhill is the ultimate extreme sport.
I think the extreme part of this sport came years and years ago, in the 50s, when, guys were on wooden skis, and they didn't have bindings that came off. They were strapped onto their skis with, the long thong. And that's extreme. When there's no fences, there's no safety nets, and there's no helmets. I mean, you are literally had a real good chance of killing yourself if you had like one small mistake. I was surprised the girls were more nuts than the guys were. I mean, some of the crashes. We watched the World Championships down in Portillo. Nancy Green, or one of the Canadian girls, has this unbelievable crash and smashes into an ice wall, like, I mean, going like 75, an ice wall like this big that stops her from going like into a bunch of crevasses and stuff, and like smashes in this ice wall like 75. I think she won the GS the next day or something. It was, I mean, pretty extreme.
Just with equipment, I mean, you can just see where it's gone. I mean, you look back at the guys in like the 40s and 50s, and they got the Tide boots, and they finally got wooden skis, and they finally get metal edges. It's just completely different now. There's definitely more turns. There's more forces put on you. We're going a lot faster. There's still that intangible trait that the downhillers have, and it's just the ability to let it go, let it hang out, and feel the speed and look for it.
Downhill racing is ultimate extreme and exceptionally cool. You ask a person to step into the start gate, challenge track in all sorts of different locations all over the world. They're all different. You're asked to go right to the razor's edge. There is no question in downhill racing, especially on the World Cup, all the best in the world are there, and you are on the edge. To have a track prepared like that for you, with all the safety up, with all the thousands of people standing at the bottom watching, that was the ultimate rush.
The downhill is a transcendent endeavor. The majesty of the surroundings, the inherent risk and rush of pure speed, combines to create an emotionally charged experience that is much more than just skiing.
It's just wide open, but I think it takes skiing to a place that's a smidge untouchable. Everybody can kind of relate to the sensation on their skis and kind of the speed happening, but downhill takes it to another level. And it's kind of that wow factor kicks in, and you just stand there and go, wow.
It's a great feeling when you're going so fast and your skis are rattling everywhere before like a 70-meter jump, and you're just like, all right, hopefully I come off this thing clean and I just soar through the air like a bird and nothing goes wrong. But once you touch down again, it's like one of the best feelings you can have.
You gotta give the mountain respect, but you can't respect it enough or it's gonna kick you in the butt. You gotta take control. You feel so pumped and charged up, and it's just like the biggest adrenaline rush. I mean, that's living. It makes you feel alive.
The downhill is the original extreme sport. It is fast, furious, and exceptionally dangerous. Simply skiing a World Cup downhill course requires much more than the ability to ski well. Years of physical preparation, hours and hours of hard work, puts these athletes in the start house. But it is sheer guts and a desire to live on the edge that gets them to the bottom of the hill. At speeds of over 80 miles per hour, even the smallest mistakes can have severe consequences. These consequences are very real and never too far from the front of the mind. But fear, far from being a liability, provides the impetus to control a race. Fear is an ally. Fear creates focus.
Being in the starting gate, that's a thrilling moment. Just sort of ready to go, and you know you have only one shot. Stay patient, and also to deal with the speed, kind of pushing your limit, and that's what I always liked the best.
watching people get ready for a downhill run in the start. There's a different look that you get on your face. There's a different kind of presence that you have. It's like when I talk to the young ones and I tell them, when you click into your downhill skis and your Super G skis, you hear those bindings go click, click. After that second click, it's on until you unclick again. Because people die racing downhill in Super G. So stay in the moment. And there's a certain kind of seriousness that goes along with that people can migrate to, and it's magnetic.
As soon as you step in the start, and they say 10 seconds, and you get the beep, beep, beep. I mean, it's just nothing but focus and go.
Some of the world's most beautiful and treacherous terrain serve as a precarious stage for the downhill, where these athletes must challenge each other, themselves, and the mountain itself. And each downhill venue on the World Cup circuit has its own unique personality. But there is one race with such a storied history that evokes so much emotion, it almost defies description.
Fast, exciting, I don't know. Scary.
Raw. Scary. Exhilarating.
It's the downhill. Because of the reputation, it definitely has a similar feel to the Super Bowl.
If you're going to talk about downhill course, you can't get away from Kitzbühel. The Honeycomb race, it's something special. The course is so difficult at the end when you are tired. It makes it such a challenge for your head.
I loved the feeling that I got in my stomach, where it felt like you were going to throw up all over yourself. That's how I felt at Kitzbühel my first time.
It takes so much mental power and strength to just throw yourself down that hill to the top and fight your way to the finish line. And it's a traditional downhill. It's whoever has the biggest balls and the most confidence to look for speed everywhere and take chances. And that, to me, is what shows you what you're made of.
This course is the most daunting in the world, but the Hahnenkamm is much more than just a difficult race. Factors other than the race loom large at Kitzbühel, creating a seminal experience.
It's not only the track that's like really challenging, tough, it's just the whole ambiance and the mystique and everything that's evolved around the Buell.
You go to Kitzbühel and you're going up for like race day, for instance, because it's kind of quiet the first training day, right? It's like kind of a ghost town in a lot of ways. Just another resort town. Second day, people start pouring in. The third day, the third training run is like bigger than any World Cup, right? There's like 20,000 people around. But when you go up for race day, you wake up in the morning, you're carrying your skis, walking over to the gondola, and there's like drunk people like walking down the street, hey, cheering for you.
You have to have the experience to know what race day is going to feel like, because everything is different that day. Like even walking from our hotel to the hill, if you hadn't planned on it taking an hour, then you were in trouble. You'd start to get nervous before you even got to the lift. Getting on the lift was harder because it was more crowded. Getting on the hill, everything was more difficult, and we haven't even got close to the course yet.
So you go up the gondola, you do your inspection, you reserve this private room so you can zone out and get ready for the race. Then you go from this quiet, peaceful room to pure chaos. People everywhere snapping photos, bands singing your name, you know, singing songs about you, singing songs about your competition. And then you're sitting there warming up and there's helicopters flying around all over the place. And then the hot air balloons are there. And, you know, you go from that to just in the start house, just the full, you know, the shades come down, man. And you just go into this place that's the most peaceful place in the world.
For me growing up, that's all I heard the U.S. downhill boys talking about was Kitzbühel. That was the proving ground. That's what turns you from a rookie into a veteran on the U.S. ski team. Only if you make it down race day in one piece.
To run your first time in Kitzbühel ever and to score a World Cup point there was great, but I didn't even know that. I hadn't even seen my time or anything. I was just fired up because I made it down. I was alive.
You're just so out on the edge of all the different parts. You are hanging it out, trying to ski it perfectly, knowing that that's just impossible. So you try your best to correct any mistakes and be zeroed in on trying to cross that finish line at first. And when you can do it, and you can see that exuberant reaction when someone does do it, you know it's a pretty special moment.
If I was a downhiller, I would have wanted 10 downhills of Kitzbühel a year. Just give me Kitzbühel, let's go out and get it on. Because a lot of the downhills, you know, you could be 30 seconds before you came to anything. Kitzbühel, man, you left the start gate, it was happening.
The Hahnenkamm is quite simply relentless. With a maximum grade of 85% and a vertical drop of nearly 3,000 feet, the first few meters accelerate racers to speeds more commonly reached in an automobile. Over the next 2 miles, racers are subjected to the most extreme terrain on the World Cup circuit.
And the start is the hardest thing there is. I mean, there's no question about that. All the people up there, there's camera cables you got to walk over. I always had the number after Klammer, so he was always right in front of me. So there was a camera crew chasing him and knocking me all over the place, stepping on my skis, all this kind of stuff. Like, do I need that when I'm trying to get ready for the biggest race of the season? But those are all the things that go into making this a real nerve-wracking experience.
And we've always referred to the start house at Kitzbühel as the morgue, because that is the feeling. The solemn looks on everyone's faces, the eyes, like the attitudes. And you go in from the sunshine, which shines on the part of the start there, into total darkness on the dark side in the start house and the dark side of the mountain. So really you're going from like life, pure life, to like death, doom, evil, you know? And then you put your poles over the wand of the start house and you look down the course and it's just people. And it's totally quiet at that point because you're so in the zone. And you're just like, this is what I live for, man. This is it. Let's just kill this thing. And you just get so fired up 10 seconds before you kick out. It's like the best feeling you've ever had in your life. And that, for me, is why Kitzbühel was always the best thing in the world.
The start, it's such a rush, it's steep, you have no moment to think about it, what you're going to do, you just got to do it, and you have to go with the flow. It requires all elements of downhill racing, like tight turns, long turns, courage.
The first 30 seconds there are about as rugged of any downhill has ever been, and definitely has a certain fear element that because it's so early in the course, you have to come out of the gate at 100%.
Usually I try to relax, go down on my haunches, kind of just cleanse my mind, and then stand up and then try to sort of stimulate myself to get your activity level up. Pulls over the wand. As the beeps signal to go, pushed out, 2 pushes only because there's not time for a 3rd push. Down into a tuck very briefly, and then up to adjust for a quick right and then a big sweeping left into the mouse fall. You had to just push your hands forward because the ground falls away from underneath you.
The opening sequence of this race is a ruthless test of an athlete's ability, and the challenge of the mousefall tends to leave an indelible impression.
The first year I ever raced Kitzbühel, it was just bulletproof, and guys were crashing all over the place. And the next guy to go down went off and hooked an edge just as he went off and started going around backwards as he went off, and I was probably like flying backwards. Me and Casey are standing at the start like, dude, this is, and the guy's helmet came off, and they were like, his head came off, like, and all we hear is like little bits on the radio, we're like, his head came off.
Land, come down the pitch very quickly into your tuck again, but then drop out because there's a compression at the bottom and you have to go through the compression and then start your turn, which is instantaneous. Sweeping off to the left to set up for a roundhouse setup to come into the Stahlhang, whereas you come into the Stahlhang, you come in the roundhouse right and then a very sharp diving left.
The exit of the Steilhang is, I think, the most difficult turn in downhill racing.
And then on to the short cat track that takes you to the Alte Schneise. But the cat track is really crucial because now you've gone through 35 seconds of really intense, tough skiing, and all of a sudden it's quiet and you're just gliding. And it's really easy to make a mistake if you don't keep the focus up.
They put that wooden fencing along either side. So not only do you have no gates, you have no course workers, no gatekeepers, no nothing. It's just you for 20 seconds in this fence that's going by on either side.
And then you come to the Alte Schneise, which is a blind drop-off. But as you go across the Alte Schneise, it's very, very rough, and one of the keys is to hold your tuck all the way across through the roughness. A sweeping roundhouse right-hand turn through the Larchenhang, where again you can almost stay in your tuck, but you want to have a clean turn to carry as much speed into the Larchenhang itself, because even though you think it's relatively flat, it's actually a fairly steep pitch and will carry your speed out onto the short flat before you come to the Hausberg jump, the Hausberg Kante.
The Hausberg to the traverse, to the finisher is just, that is what makes Kitzbühel. Just, you're just hauling ass down there, and you have to know, you come around that big left footer, and you got to know where you are. You can't see anything.
You usually can hold your tuck across the side hill chutes and you drop into the Zielhang. Now they can tuck down there, but back in our area you had your hands out in front and just hanging on for dear life.
You fly 75 meters off the last jump, almost 80 meters at 85 miles an hour. And then you're into the finish and it's like, you have 50,000 people right there. And I was like totally celebrating, like woo, like fist pumping, like kicking my ski up and stuff. And everybody's like, damn, he's pretty fired up for 30th place. I got 30th.
I did this downhill, and when I crossed the finish line, I raised my hands without knowing the time and nothing. And that means how important that race is.
For a downhiller, Kitzbühel's allure lies partly in its danger. Danger, which represents the thin line between tragedy and triumph. Two-time U.S. national champion Chad Fleischer was poised to make a breakthrough on the World Cup circuit. Although he had one podium finish to his credit, for whatever reason, the ultimate success had eluded him. Finally, the opportunity for victory presented itself at the famed Hahnenkamm.
I kicked out of the starting gate. I had been fast all the training runs there. I knew I was going to win the race. I came through the Seidelholm, over the Seidelholm jump, went around the turn there, and I could hear the famous announcer in my ear. Das ist the butcher, Achtung, Achtung. And I was just like, yeah, I'm winning this thing, baby. And I was just like trying to talk even more and more, like it was the most amazing thing. And then I came in before the Hausberg, and I was like, I'm gonna turn on that piece of snow right there. Like I could see the snow crystals glistening on the snow surface. Like it was crazy. Like I talk about the zone, and I was so in the zone, like people would think that you're lying. And I told Rasmussen, a teammate of mine, Kyle Rasmussen, on the radio, when he radioed up to give me a course report, he said, the last jump is huge. Well, during inspection, I said, I'm pre-jumping this last jump, which nobody's ever done before, for good reason. I said, I'm pre-jumping the last jump because I'm going to win the race today. And a pre-jump is when, instead of just going, like, let's say this is the lip of the jump. Instead of going off the lip of the jump and then pressing and like riding over it and compressing it and diving with the pitch of the hill, a pre-jump is when you actually jump before the lip of the jump to make sure that you don't hit the lip of the jump. And then so in essence what a perfect pre-jump does is it eliminates the lip and you land sooner on the surface of the snow and carry more speed. You don't fly as far, you get on the ground sooner, and you save time. You know, it's a game of inches sometimes, whether or not it works for you. I came down, I just was the only guy to tuck all the way across the Zielschuss. I knew if I was going to win the race, and that was my fastest split in training, that's what it was going to be. I was coming into it, and I was just like, stick to the plan, man. This is the winning run. And I pre-jumped it. My tips got about that far off the snow. I was going about 96 miles an hour, and that's all it took. It's like putting your hand out the window at 96. That air got under the bases. It just ripped. It was like pulling a ripcord, you know, going down the interstate. It's like someone just threw my parachute out, and when it opened, I just went exit out the window. I was just like, ah, this sucks. That's the one thing I do remember thinking when I was upside down about 20 feet high or more, just like looking back at the Zielschuss going, you're gonna break your neck, man. You're gonna be paralyzed from this one. And so all I thought about then was like, okay, now I have to focus on my crash. The race is over, now you have to start thinking about how you're going to walk away from this one. So I did what I could at that point to just focus on how my head was going to hit and how I could maybe roll with it. And then still hopefully cross the finish line like tumbling and that's where I actually hurt myself. When I landed on my back, it's not when I hurt myself, but my skis exploded. When they exploded in a sense that my derby flex and my binding was still on my foot. The ski just shattered and like blew to pieces. And I thought I still had a ski on my foot. So I put my foot down, going about 70 miles an hour, thinking I could pop up on, because legally you're allowed to finish with one ski on with one gate left. And I put my foot down to try and like pop up and cross the finish line. And my foot dug in with that derby flex on it, and that's when I ripped my knee apart and shoved my femur up into my hip, and that's when the damage was really done. But that was the run of runs, you know. It was like if you're known from downhill for two things: great victories or great crashes, and that was one of the great crashes, I guess. So I'll take it.
When you see somebody roll down the windows and go 85 meters and then just land flat on their back, it puts things in perspective a little bit.
There is a certain perspective that can only be achieved at 80 miles per hour. A certain serenity that can only be produced by looking deep within, testing boundaries, and achieving the unimaginable.
It was one day I was racing downhill. I felt that it's going faster and faster, and it's going rougher and rougher, and the skis are shaking more and more and more. And somehow I overcome this. Somehow I felt now I'm going even faster, and it started to get smoother. And that was the moment when I realized if I go deeper and if I make myself smaller, I can go even faster and it will be quiet. And it was really like that, from going fast to shaking and almost being afraid to lose the skis and everything, lose control. I went over that edge, I don't know, in a way to starting to fly, because you don't touch ground so often anymore.
Nestled in the stunning Jungfrau region in the Swiss Alps, the downhill in Wengen, Switzerland is a unique venue that has become synonymous with downhill ski racing.
When you think of Wengen, the race is called the Lauberhorn. It's all about tradition. It's the longest running downhill race in the world for World Cup, or even beyond that, before the World Cup even started. That's one of those races that there's just so much tradition, so much following. It's just one of those huge classics that you definitely want to win that, in your career.
Well, Wengen is like the most beautiful place on earth, first of all. There's no place more beautiful when the weather's perfect. You have this run that's 2.85 miles long in the most beautiful place on earth, and it's all yours. See how fast you can go down it, see where you can grab your tuck, see how much fun you can have. It has everything. And coupled with the fact that you have to take a train to the start to get there, I mean, there's just so much about Wengen that I think makes it the essence of downhill. The energy of downhill is Kitzbühel. The essence of downhill is Wengen, the Lauberhorn.
And Lauberhorn is an adventure. It's not just a downhill course. Lauberhorn starts when you go up with the train. I mean, when you go up and you look out of the window and you see all these mountains, you get impressed by the nature. And suddenly you feel that you are an actor in the middle of this nature.
As the essence of the downhill, the Lauberhorn is a greatest hits compilation of all things that make a downhill great. There is no other race that captures so many aspects of the sport.
Wengen is definitely a unique race. I mean, it almost stands alone, like a different event in certain ways. It just is it's so long, and it breaks into parts. You have 45 seconds, almost a minute, till you get to the top of the Hundschaft. It's 85 miles an hour glide turns, way up high, no reference of anything, like you're out in the middle of nowhere, so you're just ripping along, a couple little jumps, but basically not a whole lot going on. And then you slow down from 80 down to 30 or 25.
Hundschaft means elevator shaft, and that's exactly what it is, man. It's rocks on your left, the old net fence that comes out on the right, just comes in like a little narrow slot, and you just come up and just drop off this thing. And I've hit it good sometimes, and one train run I didn't hit so well where I boosted the whole thing, landed on the flats. And it's a good 70-foot drop pretty much, it's huge.
It's the opposite. It's like you go from totally open at the top where you're just cruising to like narrow, confined spaces. When you're in the air, you know, you're 15 feet off the ground flying and you go right by the corner of that fence, you know, when you go off the Hundschaft. And then you go right up against the next fence when you do that bank turn over that roll. And then you go down onto a road that's only less than a car lane wide, and you're going 75 down that with a fence on one side and a hill on the other. And then you go through two 90-degree turns at 70 miles an hour. You'd never be able to make those turns, I don't think, on a motorcycle or, you know, at that speed.
Well, you come out of the tunnel in Wengen and you're going, oh, shit, man, my legs are burning already and I got like a minute to go. And that's the truth. I mean, I don't care how great a shape you're in, you're feeling your legs at that point. And then you come over all these rolls and, you know, you're tucking down and they inject it with ice, right? So you see the net coming and you kind of are looking at the net because that's where you need to know where to start edging your ski to set up the last two turns. And at that point, all you're trying to do is get as high and stand as tall as you can with the wind pressing at your back, but keeping your arms in front of you just to get a little bit of blood to flow into your legs so you can pull off and get skeletally aligned and just pull off those last two turns. If you think you're going to come into those last two turns and just use muscle, you're going to end up on your back and into the nets. It's
dark and you're right into a huge compression at the bottom. You're already 2 minutes into the race, so your legs are completely cashed. You can't see well anyway because you get no blood to your head. All the blood in your body is going to your big muscle groups to keep yourself standing up. You start to essentially black out because things go gray and you start to get tunnel vision comes in, and then you have into Stump Alley in the last two turns, which are two of the most aggressive technical turns in all of downhill skiing. 75 miles an hour, you come off double camber turns and then a jump into the finish, into a huge compression into the finish. It's like four downhills all kind of stuck together into one. There's no other downhill that's as long, as physically taxing, or as taxing technically. To win that race, you have to have every facet of downhill skiing completely dialed in.
If you want to win Wengen, you got to be in great shape and you got to be smart and know how to ski those last two turns.
The Lauberhorn is easily the longest course on the World Cup circuit, nearly a minute longer than any other World Cup race. This course stalks racers, wearing them down and then pouncing, with a cruel test at the end that evaluates not only an athlete's physical conditioning, but his desire to succeed. There is perhaps no better test of an athlete in any sport than the Lauberhorn in Wengen, with elements that require strength, mental focus, power, finesse, courage, and above all else, endurance. This timeless downhill course has created legends and destroyed careers. It is difficult to imagine any other venue in any other sport that demands so much from an athlete. Managing the many variables in a downhill is a challenging endeavor. But every now and then, these variables converge in a way that takes these athletes to an entirely different level of existence.
At 50, everything's fuzzy as it goes by. And then when you get to being like 80, it all slows down and clears up out here peripherally.
Everything slows down. All of downhill racing, because you're anticipating everything so much, you feel it really does slow down. And we used a phrase, feathering our turns, because we thought we were being very, very, nursing around and being very soft and smooth, until I was standing on the side after I retired and realized you came by like a dump truck or a freight train coming blasting by at 130 or 100 kilometers an hour, 80 miles an hour.
You get in this zone and you're riding it. The line you want to ski on the course in front of you like shines and shimmers almost. And when you're in it and you're on it and you're on the top of your game, you're right on that line all the time. Wow, and it's just like blaring at you. And when you're struggling to find it, you see 2 or 3 different lines you could ski depending on how your body feels that day or what equipment you have on. It's neat internally to go through those ebbs and flows because it's all within.
There is no other sport that exposes the human body to so much speed with so little protection. And as these athletes continually search for more speed, the risk of severe injury only increases.
Downhill ski race, you know there's going to be big crashes, and it's one of those things you got to accept. If you keep denying or not believing that something bad can happen, or whatever, you're kidding yourself.
Stop. There are different kinds of falls. One fall is, for instance, it's just happening so fast you cannot even react, like you lose a ski or whatever. So then it's just boom, you try to protect yourself. Then it's a fall, you can fight against the falls. You say, well, probably I can save it. But then you see you cannot save it, you just go with it.
I never bail on the process. Like I never, even as I'm really eating, like I still am involved, because you never know when some little 2/100th of a second window is going to pop open where you can, make a significant impact on the end result.
It's that kind of thing where you think you have it until there's a split second that, like, if you lose a ski, you're pretty much done, unless you can pull that off somehow. But you get bounced around and you kind of get used to that on the edge feeling, and then some crashes are instantaneous. Like all of a sudden, you catch an edge and you're down and you go into the fence. It seems really slow, even though you look at it and you're tumbling through. It's a weird feeling, but it happens so quick. You're like, I'm online, boom, I'm in the fence. But that time between where you realize that you're gonna crash and when you hit a fence or something is a surreal moment for sure.
Gnarliest crash I've ever seen is probably Pietro Vitellini. The year I crashed in Kitzbühel was pretty bad. It didn't go down as the worst crash in history, only because it had snowed about 3.5 feet, the night before. But had he done that 2 days earlier, he would have been cartwheeling over boulders and rocks. And so I'd say that's probably the gnarliest in terms of just safety.
There was 2 short races that year. It was a lower start, and that was the first race. He ragdolled like that on the Hausberg and smashed through the picket fence and smashed himself down and was all cut up and bloodied. Got back up, went up and got 3rd in the second race, and that 2 hours later, and stuck it across there.
Formerly ranked #1 in the world as a junior, TJ Lanning is a promising addition to the U.S. ski team. But a series of individual injuries, including a torn ACL and meniscus, an injured ankle, and 2 ruptured discs in his back, has kept him off his skis for considerable lengths of time. Nevertheless, for Lanning, the risks are outweighed by the desire to be among the world's greats.
I risk so much because, it's a lot of fun, and the payoff may not seem logical now, but hopefully in the future it will be. Counting on modern medicine to make me feel better when I'm 40.
Finally healthy after years of rehab and numerous setbacks, Lanning was in a position to make a serious comeback at the 2006 Birds of Prey downhill in Beaver Creek, Colorado. But things didn't quite go as planned.
It all started from the talon turn. I made a little mistake there, and so I was just hammering, just pinning and trying to hold the bull wherever I could, and not making it as big of moves off of Golden Eagle, so I was going big and just going faster and faster, and I'm just coming into that last turn off Red Tail. I just tried to hold my tuck to that and totally just mindlessly forgot about the compression, the false compression that you don't really see. And I just kind of got jacked and squashed in there, and I was just fighting, my legs were tired and I was fighting to get back over my boards because I didn't want to go off the jump. laying on my skis, because then you just land on your head and spike yourself on the ground. And then something funky happened on my left ski, hooked up, and I just shot like exit stage right. As soon as I went up, I was just like, oh God, this is not gonna end up good. And then I just remember just ragdolling through the fence, like hit my face, hit my head, hit my back. And then I was just like laying on the snow. I mean, I think I was conscious the whole time. But then, it just all happened so fast. I'm in the middle of the downhill track again, and my face was just kind of felt like my face was shattered just because it was numb from all the scraping along the fence, and my goggles were hanging over my face and I couldn't really feel anything, so I thought my goggle frame was my nose. Kind of got feeling back in my face a little bit, and then I started getting feeling back in my hands, and I was like, oh, my hand, I had a spiral fracture from my knuckle to my wrist to my third metacarpal, and I could feel it moving up and down in my glove.
TJ's crash was sick. You wonder, should the guys watch the crashes? Did you talk about the crashes? And Darren was always he loved watching the crashes. And you're like, dude, you got to go up there tomorrow. I mean, what is that going to psych you out? He's like, hell no, man, that was a damn good crash. But that's the type of guy that actually excels in downhill.
The scariest fall I've seen has got to be, is it Todd Brooker?
It's Todd Brooker in Kitzbühel.
Todd Brooker, Kitzbühel, when he is a rag doll.
Brooker. I remember Brooker's crash when I was growing up, and that thing was, that was full rag doll, carcass huck doll.
My crash in Kitzbühel, nothing was on my mind at all. I had the strangest feeling when I was coming across the side hill that something was going on with my binding. And that's why I lifted up my inside ski. I lifted it off the ground, and the ski fell off. And so it was hanging by a thread anyway for some reason. And when I stuck my boot back in the snow, that's when I started falling forward.
Now I saw Todd coming towards me, and then suddenly he took off in the air, and he really had that famous bad fall. And I was there by my own at this place, and I have to tell you, I was frozen to death. I couldn't move.
That's the worst place to fall, and I've always been really scared. The last kilometer in Kitzbühel, it's really hard, and you can't stop, because you just have to go straight. And he just fell, he had 13 somersaults, and he was unconscious after 3 of them. So it was a bad crash, and it looked terrible.
I don't know how you get your body in that position and not tear yourself apart, because his feet were behind his head, in front of his head, and doing the splits and this and that. And it was ugly, and it's one of those falls you say that's going to end their career.
Severe injury does not discriminate. 4 years earlier, Brooker skied this stretch of the Hahnenkamm to record his first victory in Kitzbühel. This time, the mountain took a heavy toll, ending his career and revealing how thin the line between success and failure can be. There are no guarantees in ski racing. Unexpected terrain, equipment failure, or just a wrong decision can all end up with catastrophic results. But that is the nature of the downhill. All downhill racers have seen the dark side of the thin line. Some have seen it more often than others. With 2 top 10 World Cup finishes in 2005, Brian Friedman was primed to explode onto the World Cup scene. But a routine crash on a routine training run put his career on hold.
Freedog's injury was, again, then it's a great example. I mean, then you see, stuff like that. I mean, he's going around the carousel turn in Chamonix, and basically just gets inside, and loses his skis, slides, spins around, hits goes into the B-net. No big deal. I mean, it's like, I've seen guys do that 1,000 times. But he got twisted up in there, and the way it did, and his ski got caught, and it just snapped his leg like a chicken bone.
I fractured my tibia and fibula, but had a lot of soft tissue complications, compartment syndrome, and in the past 2 years I've had 8 surgeries to kind of repair all the damages and whatnot.
Brian snaps his tib fib, and then the leg blows up. They have to do a 4-compartment release on all the fascia in his legs. They had to open his leg up from his ankle to his knee like a overcooked sausage, and that had to be left open for so that the nerves and the muscles won't die from the pressure. And at the end of the day, I mean, his leg looked like it went through a wood chipper.
The comeback is there. It's staring me right in my face, and the whole time I didn't really want to face reality. I think I didn't really want to think about the crash. I didn't want to think about the injury. I just wanted to get through it and get healthy. And now that I'm back skiing and training, downhill and Super G again, it's good.
After a multitude of surgeries and nearly 2 years of rehab, Friedman is back on skis, back on the U.S. ski team, and back on the precarious surface of the thin line.
You see his knee just folds in all the way in.
Wasn't respecting it, got squashed and snapped his tib.
I've had 8 surgeries to kind of repair all the damages.
It was MCL, ACL, PCL.
And that's when I ripped my knee apart and shoved my femur up into my hip.
He had opened his leg up from his ankle to his knee like a overcooked sausage.
You're gonna break your neck, man. You're gonna be paralyzed from this.
And his knee actually went around twice, like a 720.
The allure of the downhill is underscored by the risks. Everything has a price. Many of the things that make the downhill so appealing can also make it extremely destructive.
Crashes are part of the sport, and that's kind of what we're out there doing. We're pushing it, and in every race you're going to see a pretty big crash, probably, especially in downhill. Just the tougher they are, you're going to see some guys going down, and I'm sure that's half the reason people come out to watch.
It takes a rare breed just to be able to ski a World Cup course. And it takes a truly unique individual to compete at this level.
Because of the risk and the danger, it is always a little bit awe-inspiring when you see a guy come back from a bad accident or an accident that went wrong. Overcoming adversity and overcoming injuries is a trait you see a lot with the type of athletes that are in ski racing. Guys that are big elite athletes, it takes a lot to put them down.
In ski racing, injuries are a rite of passage. It is not a question of if, but rather a question of when. And when happens, no one knows more about skiing-related injuries than the legendary Dr. Richard Stedman. As a practicing orthopedic surgeon for over 35 years, Dr. Stedman's patient list is a veritable who's who of sport, including Kobe Bryant, John Elway, Mario Lemieux, Martina Navratilova, and Ronaldo, to name just a few. But it is the frequency and severity of skiing injuries that has allowed Dr. Stedman to pioneer new techniques and strategies that have dramatically changed the impact of injuries.
Proportionately, there are a lot more people injured in skiing, and I think it's just the fact that you have it's almost a perfect storm. I think the downhill injuries were bad 25 years ago, and they're bad now. You may be a little more susceptible, I think, with the side cuts and just basically the make of the ski makes you a little more susceptible to a slightly more severe injury. The terrain is a factor too. The best downhill is the hardest downhill. So I think that puts people at risk as well. I never did a procedure until I was convinced it was the right thing. In other words, I never just experimented. I would kind of come up with an idea and think it through and start to work in stages on that idea. So I think the fact that I was dealing with skiers made me realize that even more, because you can't cheat it. There's only one way to get on edge, and that's to use your ankle and actually use your knee as well. So I started in the late 70s and early 80s to have the theory that we had to get not just the ligaments fixed or the bones fixed, but the whole joint fixed. And getting the whole joint back to having full mobility was what made the people come back and win a lot of medals.
In the 2001 World Championships, U.S. ski team member Bode Miller caught an edge and careened into the fence at 80 miles per hour, completely tearing the ACL in his left knee. Consistent with his nonconformist approach to the sport, Bode eschewed conventional treatment and instead leaned heavily on some unorthodox advice from Dr. Stedman.
It was an unconventional approach that I took with Bode, but I thought it was the only chance we had to make him come back. It was unconventional in ski racing at the time. It's more conventional now than it was then. Basically, we did a procedure that made the ligament heal. So we sewed the meniscus cartilage back and then came back. And we tried to make the ligament heal and came back at 3 weeks and looked at it and it was healing. And then we looked again at 6 weeks and it was healing. So we left that without doing a full reconstruction. And because of the circumstances around his knee, I just don't think he could possibly have achieved what he's done if we'd gone a conventional route. It was a little bit of a hard decision, and there were a lot of people that questioned it at the time, but I think the results speak for themselves.
The following year, Bode won 2 silver medals at the 2002 Winter Olympics, and within 4 years, he collected 5 World Championship medals and became the first American male in over 20 years to win the overall World Cup points title. This level of achievement, after such a severe injury, provides an excellent illustration of how perseverance and toughness are mandatory attributes to success in downhill racing. Despite the risks, the magnetism of the downhill is powerfully alluring. It is a unique event where the potential for injury is secondary to the experience itself.
It's freedom. Go as fast as possible. It's very hard to describe. It's just enjoyable to going down and then facing very difficult parts of the downhill or jumps and do it.
Just the actual feel of the wind on your face, like going, you know, and you breathing at high speed, it just makes you feel so alive. I mean, it's cold air like against your skin, and you're going 60, 70, 80 miles per hour. It's that combination of the elements being outside and really the wind in the face, I think, is the major attraction. You don't really realize it, but after I didn't have it for a while, that was kind of what I was missing.
Every sport has its icon. In alpine skiing, there has never been a more dominant or charismatic athlete than Franz Klammer. With 26 wins in the downhill, including a streak of 10 victories in a row and 5 World Cup downhill titles, Klammer is the greatest downhill skier of all time.
Franz Klammer was the epitome of ski racing. He was the greatest, still is the greatest downhill racer ever. I wanted to be like him in every way.
Klammer had the uncanny ability to find the thin line between success and failure, grab hold of it, and ride it at 80 miles per hour. To say Klammer was aggressive is an understatement. His extreme style and complete disregard for the potential consequences propelled him into the annals of ski racing legend.
I always had this feeling in the starting gate. I knew I will do it. I was full of confidence. I knew I can pull it off, and at any time I learned how to win races. You know, concentrate just on your race, you and the mountain, not thinking about anybody else.
Franz Klammer is obviously a legend. You watch his races and you're just like, where did this guy, where did he come from? He's just constantly making recoveries and just, he just exudes being right on the edge. That's kind of the reality of downhill, like you got to be on the edge like that if you want to win. And he was crazy enough to do it and pulled it off time and time again. And that's what made him so great.
Klammer, the Kaiser, he was named that the king because he strung up a bunch of wins in Kitzbühel. His performance in Kitzbühel was insane. It was, I think he won 4 times.
Klammer did in fact win 4 times at Kitzbühel, including a string of 3 consecutive victories. Klammer's reputation was built on a staggering list of performances, but the Kaiser is perhaps best remembered for a single race. At the 1976 Winter Olympics in Innsbruck, Austria, Klammer shouldered the expectations of the ski racing world and went toe-to-toe with one of the world's greats, Bernhard Russi.
I was down with number 3, and I was leading, and one after the other came down, and I was still leading, and there was only one left. That was Franz Klammer. Franz Klammer was in the starting gate. He was behind the first intermediate time, the second intermediate time, he was still behind. And suddenly there were 60,000 people in this stadium and the whole mountain started to shake.
Klammer knew that his run would demand something different. No one could have known at the time, but within minutes, alpine ski racing would be changed forever.
By the time I walked into the starting gate, I knew I'm going to win. I was so convinced that I can do it. But I knew I have to risk everything. I was so focused, I was so concentrated just on the run. And then halfway down, I was looking at the crowd. Kind of, now I better do something to win the race. So I changed the line completely. But I felt that, they were really pushing me.
All of the elements, the course, the fans, and Klammer's go-for-broke style all converged for 1 minute and 45.73 seconds to produce the greatest run the sport has ever seen.
I just looked at the crowd, and they were excited, and I knew I won it. I really was happy, of course, and relieved that I did my greatest race, or my most important run. I have won so many things without the Olympic title. It would have been a good career, but not the great career.
Really, the whole mountain was shaking when Franz came down, and I personally think there is somewhere that power from spectators, they can pull him down. I think that gave him the extra kick, and there was something in the air. He couldn't lose that race, no way. Finally, he also skied a line in the final pitch, which I'm sure he was never recognizing. Nobody went there ever to see if it's possible or not. He just went down a straight line, which normally everybody says is just impossible. You cannot stand this. He did it.
The thing that brought ski racing to the American public was Franz Klammer. 1976 Olympic downhill, Innsbruck, Austria. That really brought skiing to the public's eye here in the States. The thing that I remember about Franz really more than anything is he was the same guy whether he was 30th or whether he was on top of the world. He was just a class act. To me, that was, much more important than winning.
Klammer's ability to ride the razor-thin line while somehow staying in complete control remains the standard for extreme in downhill racing.
When you watch it, you think, gosh, are they as far out on the edge as I think they are? And then you watch the control and the finesse and the beauty with which some people race, and you're like, oh no, they're in complete control, going 90 miles an hour. Whoa, Every time I was racing downhill, I was never going fast enough. I was always looking for some way to go faster because it wasn't ever coming at me fast enough. And you're just reaching for it, go, go, go. And it's a mentality that is difficult to explain to people. But the amount of control that you have at that high speed, it's just like, it's power.
A guy told me one time on a chairlift, you guys are 100% in control of being 100% out of control. And I thought that was perfect because it's so true. If you look at downhill and the essence of downhill, it is being so stoked about living on that ragged edge, being right on that threshold where you could either be paralyzed, be dead, or be a champion. And I think that's what keeps everybody going. That's why guys that are downhillers have that attitude.
I think a downhiller is, how should I say, a conservative gambler maybe. You have to be a gambler. To try to find the edge, to try to find the limit, and this is still the same thing. It doesn't matter if it's 50 years ago or today or tomorrow, it's always the same.
For athletes who want to push the envelope and who want to know what they're capable of, you never know. There's always that question there. You got to be brave. You got to have sack, and you got to be willing to push the envelope of comfortable. Because a lot of the time in ski racing, you're not comfortable at all.
It's obviously off-center and it's not mainstream. They're unique guys, especially that excel at it. I mean, they have to be prepared to risk and be prepared to do things that you don't think you can do. But do them. And that's what downhill's about.
The reason for me to be a downhiller was that ultimate challenge. It was the all-out effort and fear and, stepping right in your face and kind of fighting back. I mean, I like you felt totally alive and you were in the moment.
Downhill is still a big challenge. It hasn't lost anything of its magic.
Essentially, downhill ski racing is a solitary sport. When you peel back the layers, you discover its true essence. When you take away the glamour, the fans, the teammates, and the other competitors, you have a one-on-one confrontation between an athlete and a mountain. Over the years, the downhill has set the standard for extreme. Though legends fade and new champions are crowned, the core of downhill ski racing has remained the same. It is a unique experience that explores the limits of human ability and the character of this sport, its power, grace, speed, and danger, continues to be redefined by athletes who refuse to acknowledge the boundary between what is feasible and what is impossible.